It was journalist Walter Cronkite who was named the most trusted public figure in America. That was in a public opinion poll in the 1970s. Fast forward to 2018, and public opinion of journalists and media outlets appears to be less than favorable. Perhaps what's most disarming is the lack of trust the public has in the news. Today, I'm joined by local journalists and media professionals working diligently to continue seeking the truth in their coverage while building trust with their audiences. They join me to share their perspectives on our current media climate. At the desk is Karen Magnuson, editor and vice president of news at the Democrat and Chronicle. Evan Dawson, host of WXXI's Connections with Evan Dawson. Tiana Mignon, editor-in-chief of Open Mic and contributing reporter at WXXI. And last but not least, my boss, Randy Gorman, news director at WXXI Public Broadcasting. And welcome. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks.
So before we dig into our current media climate, Karen, how do you explain the purpose of journalism to the masses?
Well, the very purpose is to deliver the truth, covering your communities in a way that is authentic, but also reveals problems that can help lead to solutions for change.
And you said covering the truth, and based on that, what types of factors or circumstances do all of you think have contributed to this change, right? We've got Walter Cronkite and other journalists hailed as heroes and trusted figures to where we are today in 2018 when we are experiencing this distrust, which is really widespread. How did we get here, and is any of it justified?
You want to take that one, boss?
Yeah, well, let's start with, it's easy to say, and certainly there's some credence to the fact that President Trump, when he took office, even before that, as much as he used the media in ways that I think benefited his campaign style, has certainly been hypercritical. The fake news phrase, in fact, I think he almost claims he practically trademarked it. All that being said, and not disagreeing with any of the idea that he has helped foster perhaps among some people that kind of a attitude toward the media, I kind of saw it happening some years ago when cable networks, some stations in larger markets started becoming, and I'm talking mainly TV, becoming more sensational, started doing perhaps a mixture of infotainment, entertainment, and news. And I think some of that among a good portion of the viewing or listening public started to get them to feel, I wonder if I can trust this particular media source, because they are spending so much time kind of blending their own opinions as well as entertainment news into what we would consider quote-unquote hard news.
I think I would just add to that this is not just an administration issue. This is an issue right now there that political leaders don't think they have to talk to the media if they don't want to. Chris Collins just won re-election, or appears to have won re-election to Congress, and has said he will not speak to journalists and doesn't think he has to. You have Governor Cuomo, who rarely does one-on-one substantive interviews, doesn't think he has to. You have political leaders at local levels who rarely talk to journalists beyond just a quick news conference or maybe a quick phone call. They don't think they have to anymore. It's not just a Republican issue, though I do think this administration has weaponized this view of the press in a way that I think is pretty toxic and dangerous.
And when that happens, in turn, how does that impact our audience? How does that impact our local community?
I'm turning to you there.
The local community, great. I would say it's twofold, because now you already have a community that didn't feel listened to, and now when they're reading the news, they're not even getting the news that they were supposed to get about certain officials. So they don't see themselves in the news, and now it's lost a little bit of value in that they're not getting good political coverage sometimes. And it's not always the fault of journalists, but when you can't chase down an official, you're at a loss. You can't make things up. You don't always want to rely on unnamed sources. So you need people to go on the record. But I think a lot of times there's also a lack of media literacy. People don't understand how this job works. And so when you have this loss of gatekeepers and people who kind of circumvent those rules and they put that information out anyway, it changes the conversation radically, and it puts journalists kind of, I would say, in the red, because now you're kind of chasing and you're trying to keep up.
I think the key is to be transparent about how we do things, what we do on a day-to-day basis. And at the Democrat and Chronicle, we try to do that through a variety of ways. Columns that I write about changes that are happening to our own product, our own newspaper, and all of the digital services that we now provide. It's also through stories now, and sometimes what we call watchdog columns, where we let people know when, if we've filed a FOIL and when the government is refusing to give us the information, or if somebody is refusing to meet with us or meet with our editorial board, we call them on it. We'll do that in an editorial. So I think it's really important for us to be able to reach out and help people understand how much we care about the facts, what we do to ensure accuracy and credibility, and how we go about doing what we do every day. All of us care deeply about making sure we get things right.
I'm going to go back to something that you said, Tiana, in terms of sometimes people just don't know how this job works. And President Trump's post-midterm election news conference, this was yesterday at the White House, he said, this is a quote, "I think the media is a very divisive thing for our country." He also said, when you report fake news, you are the enemy of the people. So I want to know, what does it mean to report fake news versus look at a story from different perspectives and then bringing it to your audience, your readers, your viewers?
Well, that's a phrase which Evan used the term weaponized, and that's what this administration has done increasingly in the last several months, really. I mean, he can use that phrase. It doesn't mean that there's truth to it. I mean, it's easy to say that this story, as you saw during that news conference, and paint the reporters as enemies, and his base is going to eat that up. Hopefully, people who have a bit more objective view of the media will be able to discern whether they think stories that they are seeing or watching are legitimate. There's not a lot you can do except for some of the things that Karen talked about in a broader sense. I mean, being transparent. We try to do that at WXXI. We try to do that in connection with some of the principles that NPR follows in their radio coverage, in being very open, transparent in the process, and addressing any corrections quickly that have to be made. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot you can do to change, I think, the minds of the people who, no matter what you say, are going to believe that kind of narrative.
I want to go back, too, if I could, just to what Randy said about the way things started to change with cable news, and you had sort of this right-left paradigm, fair or not. You have more sources of information than ever, and yet people are, I think, more interested in finding information that confirms what they already believe. And they can find it. You can find anything that supports your opinion now. And so what you have are people seeking out that information and then feeling like, well, if the other side is telling me I'm wrong, I don't want to hear that. And maybe that is fake news, and maybe I do just want to hear what the president says. And I think we don't have a country, at least it has been, I mean, again, historians are going to call me on this, but we really don't have a country that has state-run media in the way that a lot of authoritarian countries do. So people haven't experienced how bad that is to not have real journalism. They might think, well, I like the president. Well, I'd rather just hear it from him. I'd rather just hear it from the White House. No, you wouldn't. Even if you liked previous administrations, you don't just want the Obama administration or the Bush administration or the Trump administration. There's a real risk there, but we don't have a country that's experienced that. So some people might think, I would like that better. We don't need journalists. That's dangerous.
I think that I want to kind of move on to local just a little bit, because I think that what we feel in the 24/7 cable news stations, I mean, you can question whether is that media or news, like is there a way, do we need to differentiate between the two? Because that's a lot of information being used to fill a certain time slot versus a deadline for the paper versus a deadline for your show. A different way of reporting the news, I think. And I want to kind of bring this down just a little bit to the local level. Are there aspects of local news coverage that are really getting lost in this rhetoric of media distrust right now?
I think one obvious thing, and speak for us en masse, is we don't have certainly maybe the numbers of people that we used to in the old days, in some cases, to cover some of the small town board, village board meetings, but you can see when the DNC or WXXI or other media are able to get behind the scenes of what you might consider to be a dry subject, a zoning board decision, something that is buried in government papers that we foiled. You can see how important it is to find facts that will lead the local populace to find out, hey, this is what my government is doing with my tax dollars, with my kids in the school board, whatever. That information is so crucial. It's not quote unquote sexy. It may not be exciting from a overall perspective if someone didn't have the time to look into that information. But I think that's the kind of work that has to increase. We have to increasingly pay attention to, because sometimes some of that stuff does get lost in the shuffle because maybe it's not as flashy immediately. If you're looking at it from the broader perspective of what you see maybe on national TV, where things have to be in your face right away. You really need to kind of get, what do these numbers mean? How are they going to affect me on a daily basis? And that's I don't want to call it drudgery, but it's the really grunt work we should be doing every day to kind of bring information that it's not for our own aggrandizement, it's for the public. We're supposed to be, in a way, representatives of what people want to know.
The latest Gallup poll finds that 45% of Americans trust the media and the news to fully and accurately, fairly report the news. So this means that news media is slowly recovering from that all-time low in 2016 at 32%, but it's not where it once was in the 90s and the early 2000s. And I want to know, how does that personally affect all of you? I'm curious as to how these, when you hear numbers like that, when we have, we've all experienced anti-media occurrences at the DNC, the vandalism in October, we've dealt with it. How have these things affected your work, how you look at this field, and the stories that you cover?
I can speak directly to that. At Open Mic, since we do a lot of Black local coverage, we were dealing with this distrust across the board, but then especially within this community. And so for us, it was really just sitting down and understanding, what are your issues? Okay, so you don't feel covered in mainstream news for whatever reason. What are the stories that they're missing out on? And then going from there. And so for me, it's really just understanding that that statistic, it's not a slam against journalists. It's really just an annual evaluation. It's your chance to reflect on what you're doing as an editor, a journalist. Are you talking to the right people, or are you always interviewing the same people? Do you have different perspectives? Even sometimes how you share your headlines. Are your tweets actually as accessible? What time are you tweeting these headlines? Because there are some people who need to read about those board decisions who aren't going to be on Twitter until after 5 p.m. Not everyone can be on social media during work. So you have to differentiate it. And I think understanding where that distrust comes from, a lack of not being served, and then attacking it that way will help a lot of journalists not take it as such a personal attack.
I think it's important to just continue to maintain your core values, and that's one of the things that we've done at the Democrat and Chronicle, is make sure that we uphold certain standards. And while a lot has changed in our business and the way we go about our work has changed due to technology, the core values have remained the same since I was managing editor in 1999 of the DNC. So upholding our First Amendment responsibilities, which is through investigative reporting, being a watchdog for the community, providing a top-notch local report, because local, even though we do provide national news, local is really the franchise. Number 3, reflecting the diversity of the community, as you brought up, because that's really important to make sure that you are reflecting the community in authentic ways through your coverage. Ensuring accuracy and credibility, which if you don't do that, then nothing else really matters. And then the last core value that really has been tacked on in the last half a dozen years is innovating for the future. One of the things you have to do is continue to invest in the platforms that people are migrating to, while you're trying to maintain the integrity of the traditional legacy platforms like the print newspaper.
But I think we're a little fragile here. I mean, I appreciate the question, but certainly as a white male journalist, I mean, if the White House or if local officials or if the governor doesn't like me or is saying that I'm fake news or whatever, I think journalists have been a little fragile. They've made the story a little bit too much about them and need to continue to do the work and not make it about them. I thought Jim Acosta at the White House press conference sort of knew where that was going. He's built a brand on it. The first time that happens, I understand why he's the story. I don't need him to be the story a half a dozen times. I'm not blaming Jim Acosta for the president's boorish behavior, but that simply further divides us here. And I think we have to be a little cooler and calmer about this stuff right now.
We just have to stop taking things so personal. It's not about us. I mean, if you're delivering news, it's a service, and you have to recognize that you have to give people what they want. Otherwise, this is probably why they're not paying.
Well said.
Did you want to jump in, Randy?
No, I agree with everything that's been said, and I've been in this business for decades. I won't say how many years, but many years. And I've taken, and actually this past week, I've taken calls where I've had somebody occasionally, not often, but once in a while, will swear when they start, getting upset about a story. At the same time, complimenting the work that Evan and others had done in connection with some of the recent reporting. So you learn to take the good with the bad, and I think Evan's absolutely right. I mean, we talk about this. It's a great water cooler discussion, but we have to be a little less sensitive and just get on with the job, because that's what we're being paid to do. That's what our community expects us to do, really.
So in the midst of all this that we're talking about, changing media landscape, layoffs that we have to deal with, shrinking audiences, et cetera, how do we protect the value of local journalism while also protecting the value of local journalists?
Well, I mean, one way is continue to fund it, and Tiana raised, and among others, have raised important points just about how things have changed, how we need to be accessible to everyone, how we need to prove our value, but also figuring out sort of how to crack the code. I mean, that's one reason I'm happy to be in public media. No offense to our friends in other aspects. It's hard. It's hard to convince, especially younger readers and listeners and viewers, to pay for things that they've grown up not having to pay for. I don't necessarily know a perfect answer other than to continue to do vital work, which sort of feels like a tautology. You know, do great work to do great work, and hopefully people will pay for it. But that's a hard thing to crack.
It is, and really I think one of the things that we have decided to do is fewer stories but better stories. And so what we do, instead of going to every single school board or town council meeting, we make sure that we have good sourcing that will lead us to the best stories and great expertise on our staff to be able to do deep dives into issues that people really care about.
We have to close for now, but a huge thank you to my colleagues in media for joining me and for your work in our local news community.